Chapter 6 The Hunt. "So you think I am Greymane returned again?" Silverside said after Lifecrier had finished the tale. "I do," Lifecrier answered emphatically, still speaking in the formal hunt tongue. "You have come to lead us back to the time of the Great Pack. Can you deny it, Silverside? Can you say with certainty that I am wrong?" The robot searched her memory. There was nothing there that directly contradicted the possibility, improbable as it might seem. Beyond the moment of her awakening in this place and the erratic store of knowledge she'd been given, there was nothing yet. "I can't," Silverside answered truthfully, as she had to. She shook her head. "I don't know." "You told me that you were formless as the void itself when you came. You said that when you saw us, you felt compelled to change your shape so that you looked like us." "That is true." "Then what I've said is also true," Lifecrier answered triumphantly, and gave a joyous howl that many of the others joined with. "You've been sent because of the walking stones and the Eel of Stars. I know it, Silverside. I know it as I knew the old tell you, the sign that the old mother has forgiven us." Silverside was troubled. The delicate balance of the three laws shifted in her mind, weighing priorities. "Perhaps," she said again. "Possibly. I don't know, Lifecrier. I cannot answer you. I don't know." Silverside glanced back at Packhome. Keen Eye sat on her haunches at the entrance to the cave, limed in the glow of the moss. The smell of wood fire mm, smoke preserving the meat in the cold caves was strong in the night. Keen Eye stared at Silverside and the gathering of kin around her. There was a distinct menace in her gaze. Silverside knew that if she tried to brush past Keen Eye into Packhome, there'd be a challenge. Here and now, with no way to back out of it. First law imperatives made her turn aside instead, though she hesitated. With the kin watching, she padded away toward a trail that led to the top of the hill. As she moved away, Keen Eye stirred and called after her. "The hunt will go out again tomorrow," the leader said in commanding hunt tone. "You will join us instead of staying behind at Packhome." The robot looked back. The second law was clear here. Keen Eye was a human and the leader. "As you wish," she said. Keen Eye nodded. Her eyes glinted, her lips lifted above her incisors. She gave a low beast-talk growl and settled down in front of the entrance. Silverside turned away from the other kin and continued on. She spent the rest of the night alone at the summit of the hill, staring at the moons and the hill of stars in the distance. She pondered all that Lifecrier had said and mused over the differences between herself and the kin. If there was an old mother, as Lifecrier insisted, she said nothing to Silverside that night. Keen Eye said nothing to the robot when she came down from the hilltop in the first light of morning. Lifecrier was as friendly as ever, but the other kin were less eager than they had been the night before, sensing the unresolved conflict with Keen Eye. Where Lifecrier came up to her eagerly, his tongue stroking her face in the greetings of the kin, the rest of the wolf creatures hung back. Though they made way for her as they would have for any higher status kin, they said very little to her unless she spoke first. Silverside's behavior didn't help things. At full light, Keen Eye ordered the meat to be dragged from the storage caves for the communal meal. The kin gathered in the largest of the caves, sitting down in the large, ragged circle, the pups running in and out among the adults, smoke-preserved flanks passed from hand to hand. Silverside declined her portion. "I don't eat," she said to the startled adolescent who handed the robot her share. It was only the simple truth. Silverside hadn't even thought it strange, it simply was, a fact that somehow she knew. "I cannot, even if I wished. It is not necessary for me." But she heard the beast talk grumbling and speculation from some of the others. "You see, Keen Eye," Lifecrier had said, "she is part of the void, not of the earth. She is full of the spirit of the old mother." Keen Eye responded with a howl of irritation. "Give her nothing, then, if she insists on playing the old mother. the leader barked. "And if she hasn't the strength for the 'unt because of it, let the sharp things have her." Kenai growled and stalked from the cave herself, smelling of anger and resentment. The rest of the day all the kin but Life Crier avoided her, though she felt them watching and sniffed their uncertainty, watching and wondering. The hunt left Pack home in the early evening, after the heat of the day had subsided and the sunlight turned to evening's gold green. This time none of the other kin would place themselves ahead of Silverside. She was second in the ragged line of kin that trotted down the hill into the green, scent-filled forest. Peckham was quickly lost behind a screen of foliage, and the hunt was immersed in the sights and scents of the forest. Birds were beginning to settle in their roost for the coming night. Quick shadows flitted through the bushes. Smaller animals scurried through the underbrush as the pack moved quickly past. Kenai led them into the glow of the setting sun, and Silverside wondered that. The perfect recall of her robotic mind could not forget Lifecryer's remark that the walking stones, whatever they were, had driven away the game near the Hill of Stars. Yet Kenai padded unerringly in that direction. Once one of the younger kin had questioned Kenai's path, and the leader had simply turned with a beast-tongue growl that sent the adolescent into submissive silence. After that, there was no more conversation within the pack at all. They followed Kenai, silently along the winding game trails. Had Silverside been human, or even kin, she might have marveled at the sights, scents, and sounds of the forest. She might have gaped at the papery pods the size of a youngling, dangling from vines and wriggling with some gelatinous interior life. She might have stopped to sniff the perfumed sap oozing up from below a rocky slope. She might have been moving, startled by the shrill rasp of tall weeds that were moving, though there was no wind. She might have been captivated by the assorted small animals that leaped across the path and watched as the kin loped quickly by. Her postronic brain saw all of it, but without passion. She cared only for that which affected the intricate balance of the three laws. She noted that, although the small life was abundant, there were few signs of the larger creatures that were food for the kin. She noted the growing apprehension of the pack as Kenai continued westward. That resonated with the laws. She saw how Lifecrier and the others watched her, waiting to see what the spirit of the old mother would do, and she wondered if, just maybe, these priorities she felt were a reflection of a goddess's will. Her logic circuit snickered at the thought, but couldn't entirely banish the possibility. The weight of possible danger, tweaking the first law, nudged Silverside into speech. She lengthened her stride, moving alongside Kenai. She used careful kin speech, not wanting Kenai to feel formally challenged. "I've heard Lifecrier and the others say that the meat animals have all left because of the walking stones. Is that true, Kenai?" "The old mother didn't bother to tell you?" "No," the robot answered. Then, when Kenai said nothing further, "Is it true?" she asked again. A nod. "You have a problem with that?" Kenai would not look at her. She continued to trot, her red tongue lolling out between the knives of teeth. The leader was leaving, Silverside no opening for further questions, forcing the confrontation she was obviously expecting. Silverside hesitated. At last she dropped back into the pack again. They continued on. By midnight the pack was very near where the Hill of Stars had glowed the night before. There was an odd silence in the woods, as if most of the creatures that normally lived here had gone. The very silence nudged Silverside again. She did what none of the kin would have dared to do. The decision was simple, the reasoning complex. By deliberately failing to define human, by not even telling the robot that it was a robot, Janet and Nastasi had forced upon her robot an unusual freedom of action and a liberal interpretation of the three laws. She made a construct that didn't consider itself mechanical. She would likely have been pleased with what the robot had done so far, with Silverside's creativity, But Silverside was still bound to the laws. The second law demanded that she obey humans, and she had accepted the wolf creatures as human. In a pack society, the leader spoke for all. Therefore, Kenai's commands must carry more weight than that of any of the other kin. Yet, the first law demanded that she protect human life, and logic led her to favor the many over the few. If Kenai was indeed leading the pack into danger, the first law demanded action. Yet, she'd already seen that the very lifestyle of the kin involved danger. The sharp fangs, the leadership challenges in the pack, the scarcity of food. One could not be human and avoid danger. That damped the strength of the first law. She had to know more. She might not be forced to action, but she was compelled to ask. She ran swiftly in front of the leader. For a moment Silverside thought that Kenai would simply ignore her and shoulder past, and the balance within her shifted again. But Kenai drew up short. The pack came to a ragged halt behind Kenai. Silverside could smell their anticipation. If the kin need food, what good does it do us to go west? She used hunt tongue, stressing the importance of her question. Kenai gave her only a low beast-talk rumble deep in her throat. She glared and sat back on her hind legs, the clawed forepaws threatening ready. Kenai was not going to answer the question, Silverside realized, but then Lifecrier pushed his grizzled muzzle forward and yapped support. Silverside, ask the questions we all have, Kenai. Kenai looked back at the line of kin. They were staring back, quiet and very intent. Silverside knew that the leader saw the subliminal challenge there. Most of the kin had gathered around Lifecrier, saying nothing but lending their unvoiced support to his question. Frost blue eyes turned back to Silverside. Do you challenge me now, Silverside? Is that what the old mother tells you? There is no food, Silverside said. The forest here is empty of all the meat animals. That's why I spoke. You don't even eat the meat. Why should you care? Silverside searched in her mind. I must do what is best for all kin. That is the leader's task, Kenai growled for emphasis. Only the leader's task. Balances changed again. The robot had no doubt that it was more intelligent than any of the kin. She knew things, whether inborn memory or the old mother's gift. She could see 100 ways to improve the life of the kin. She was also physically stronger than any of them, and she could change her shape if need be. More intelligent, stronger, the chosen of the old mother. All that, coupled with Kenai's insistence on coming here, spoke through the laws. The decision clicked in her mind, firm and certain. Silverside could best obey the laws in her head by leading the pack. I challenge you, Kenai, Silverside said in hunt tongue. Kenai seemed to sigh, her eyes closed as if in momentary prayer. As you wish, she said. The wolf creature came at Silverside in a snarling rush, her jaws wide open to rip at the robot's throat. But Silverside, with the superb reflexes Janet and Nancy had given her, was no longer there. She moved back on her hind feet and turned, sliding aside just enough so that Kenai's momentum took her past her. Silverside reached out and shoved Kenai as she tried to turn. Kenai nearly crashed headlong into a tree, falling and rolling hard. The leader bounded to her feet quickly, but there was the dazed glaziness in her eyes. Kenai stood two-legged, howled at Silverside, and leaped, fingers out to claw the robot. This time, Silverside allowed Kenai to strike her. Claws scraped on her metallic flanks without leaving a mark. Kenai howled in anger, frustration, and pain, and raked at Silverside again, trying for the eyes. They were vulnerable, if her skin was not. Silverside flinched. Rearing back, Silverside blocked the curving blow and grabbed Kenai's hand/paw, twisting the joint. Kenai screeched, though Silverside was careful not to break any bones. Slowly she forced the wrist backward. As Kenai thrashed to get free, she spat at the robot as she clawed with her free hand. Nothing she did seemed to hurt the robot. Silverside was far too strong for the wolf creature. Silverside forced Kenai down to the grass and pulled her over on her back. "Submit," she whispered to the leader, and it seemed the others heard an odd sympathy in her voice. She did not seem happy in her victory. "Kill me," Kenai grunted back, her lips bared over her fangs. She snapped uselessly at Silverside. "I will not submit. Kill me." Silverside put more pressure on the hold. Ligaments groaned. "Submit," she said again. "I need you to help me, and you are useless to the pack dead. Give me your throat." The defiance went out of Kenai. The paw was limp in Silverside's grasp. Kenai tilted her muzzle back in submission. And yet, even as Silverside stood in triumph over Kenai, there was a crashing of underbrush behind her, and a screech of pain from one of the kin. First Law reaction whirled Silverside around as a youngling was hurled through the air to fall near Silverside. He rolled on the ground, bleeding from a deep gash in his side, and yelled in pain. "A walking stone!" Life Crier shouted. "Beware!" Silverside's lips drew back in a beast-tongue snarl. Standing over the wounded kin was the apparition that had just burst through the trees. It stood on two legs, its hand clenched into fists encased in a shiny metal skin. It was far larger than any of the kin, and if what it had done to the youngling was an indication, it was immensely strong. Behind the featureless head, Silverside could hear motors whirring softly. It smelled of lightning and stone. The head swiveled. The apparition seemed to regard Silverside strangely. Then, with a swiftness that surprised her, it charged. Chapter 7. A Fight. The pack was milling in confusion. Life Crier howled a lament for the down youngling, as those in the direct path of the walking stones scattered. Only Silverside was immune to the panic. She could only respond as the laws allowed her, and the first law left her no choice. She lunged forward, slamming herself hard into the chest of the constructed thing that had attacked the kin without warning. There was no hesitation or action at all. It was a pure first law response to protect the life of humans. Her jaws closed on an unyielding metallic arm. With a strength equal to her own, the walking stone flung Silverside away. She rolled to soften the impact, allowing her body to deform, to absorb the shock. She whirled back to attack. Life Crier and Kenai had rallied the others. All but the carriers tethered to the travois formed a ragged circle around the injured youngling, protecting him from the walking stone. They snarled and snapped, making quick thrusts of their own, but staying out of range of the powerful arms. The walking stone had stopped, pointing a finger at the pack. Silverside, in motion, saw the fingertip become round and a dark opening appear at its apex. "Weapon!" The word screamed in Silverside's head. "Kenai," she shouted, "scatter!" She hurled herself as the walking stone's extended arm. Metal clashed against metal. A line of searing, intense light cut a crazy swath harmlessly through the foliage as Silverside's rush knocked the walking stone's arm aside. The kin yelped and retreated again. Gears whirled menacingly inside the walking stone. The smell of it made Silverside snarl. The featureless, impassive face turned towards Silverside, who faced it defiantly. Deliberately, the walking stone pointed its deadly, laser-tipped finger at her. The aiming beam tracked brilliant across her body. The skin glowed white just behind. The ferocious heat translated as pain to Silverside's post-traumatic brain. The human responses overlaid there made her yelp in response, though the tough metal alloy was only scorched, not yet melted. Still, the attack disrupted circuitry to that side of her body. She went down. The walking stone turned its attention back to the pack, now huddled in a knot around the youngling. "Silverside?" Life Crier called, her fierce sense strong. "What do we do?" Silverside tried to answer. Nothing happened. Her vocal circuits were temporarily gone as well. Kenai and Life Crier tried to rally the kin. The pack had its own peculiar method of fighting. A Silverside had seen before on her way to from her egg to the pack home. She knew what Keen Eye's command bark said. Circle, keep moving. Keep the walking stone busy, but don't let it touch you. A sharp fang would have been dealt with in much the same way, the pack whirling around it like a clawing, biting tornado, dashing in to nip at ankles and then leaping back, harrying the creature until, exhausted and frustrated, it gave them a fatal opening. Then they would swarm in as one and bear it down. Such tactics gave the kin the ability to deal with carnivores far larger and stronger than themselves. Such tactics were horribly ill-suited for their current foe. It required no effort for Silverside to picture what would happen if the walking stone used its laser on any of the kin. The first law need to respond drove everything else from Silverside's mind. With the left side of her body still shut down, there is only one possibility. With anything fashioned to resemble a living creature, the joints, necks, elbows, and knees are the most fragile area. Silverside knew that. As a shape changer herself, structural dynamics were part of her core knowledge. Her malleable body shifted, altered. The mostly immobile left side she rounded as best she could. Everything else she metamorphosed into a massive, coiling muscle. She gathered herself, aimed, leapt. Metal boomed against metal like a thunderclap. The walking stone's neck was stabilized with supports, but none were designed to withstand the tremendous hammer blow Silverside represented. There was a screech and a wailing of stressed steel. Welds popped as the head was suddenly canted at an acute angle. The glowing eyes dimmed. The thing staggered, its laser fired wildly and high. Its knees buckled, it seemed to wheeze mechanically. It fell. As it fell, Silverside heard its voice in her head. Oddly, Silverside understood it, for the thing spoke in the language she'd been born with. Central, under attack, badly damaged, and shutting down. The voice trailed off. None of the kin looked like they'd heard it. Silverside had fallen herself, resuming her wolf shape. As her body cooled, control returned. She managed to limp slowly to her feet, and stood on her hind legs over the fallen walking stone. It twitched spasmodically, but it seemed no threat. Its mental voice was silent. As Silverside watched, a plume of thin, acritic smoke came from the broken neck, and all movement stopped. Silverside lifted her muzzle and gave a beast-talk howl of triumph, as she'd seen the other kin do after a kill. The others howled with her. Lifecrier and Keen-Eye padded over. Both grovelled in front of Silverside, baring their necks in ritual submission. "You are the bane of walking stones," Lifecrier declared. "You saved our lives and the lives of all the kin here." "Yes," Silverside answered. It was not immodesty, it was simply truth. Keen-Eye rose, her eyes unreadable. "I was wrong," she said. "What the Lifecrier said of you is true. You are the wisest of us. You are the old mother's gift." She paused. "You are now the leader of the kin." "Yes," Silverside said. The decision echoed in all her judgment circuits. "Yes, I am," she repeated. Well, I hope you all have been enjoying this. From what I can see of the next chapter, we finally go back to Derek and Ariel. It's been a very interesting stuff having a robot as the main character for such a long time, but from now on it seems we'll be alternating chapters between Silverside and Derek and Ariel. So, that's that. I hope you all enjoyed and see you Saturday. Bye!